Everyone keeps saying, don't go to China. They'll lie to you, exploit you, and you'll be stuck there for years. But what if I told you that 90% of these fears are just based on myths and not on actual facts? I've been through it myself, from doubts to fears to stereotypes and to even living and working in China. And today, I'm here to tell you the truth. What they don't say on forums, the reason why teaching in China might not be a trap, but could actually be the best decision of your life. Let's dive in. When I first thought about teaching in China, I'll be honest, I felt about everything at once. Curiosity, excitement, but also fear. What if they trap you in a contract? What if you're overworked or scammed? These are the headlines I was always seeing online. And the stereotypes, they were everywhere. You'll be stuck in a tiny apartment. You'll be exploited by your school. You'll never be treated fairly. And the truth is, the majority of people who said these things are people who have actually never been to China. So, why did I still go? Because underneath the fear, there are questions. What if China is not as bad as people say it is? What if it's a massive opportunity? And guess what? I'm very glad I took the risk. My schedule was manageable, I had housing provided, and I met people who truly cared about my success, not just as a teacher, but as a person. My expectations, I thought I'd be constantly stressed and always on edge. But the reality is that I was able to have time to explore, save money, and grow as a professional. Who should watch this video? For those people who are curious about China and are unsure if it's a trap. For people who are tired of the fear-mongering and want to see China for themselves. And for people who are especially curious about teaching abroad in general. You might actually realize that the opportunity you've been looking for could very well be the place where you were told not to go to. Myth number 1. In China, you'll be completely alone and you'll receive no support. This couldn't be further from the truth. When I arrived in China, the very first support I received was from my school. When I arrived in the airport, someone actually picked me up. And someone even took me to the bank to help me set up a bank account. That may sound small, but when you live in a foreign country, those small things become huge. At work, I had a staff member who was bilingual, who was assigned to help me with any issues with housing and even with immigration. This person would always go with me to immigration whenever I had to extend my visa or do any paperwork. And outside of school, it wasn't hard to find a community of foreign teachers. There are WeChat groups in any city, especially big cities. You can join WeChat groups and find foreigners and expat communities, and you can connect with them. Chinese people are also very kind and very helpful. For example, one of my colleagues recommended a great hospital to go to because my wife was pregnant at the time. She ended up giving birth at that hospital, and even with the language barriers, if I gave her a call, she was always happy to translate for me. So don't believe the stereotype that Chinese people are not good to foreigners. So if you're living in a foreign country and you're worried that you will be all alone and that you will receive no support, don't worry. You won't be abandoned. You'll have help from your school, other colleagues, and other expats, and even people who are locals will go out of their way to make sure that you're okay. Once you experience that firsthand, the myth of being alone completely disappears. Let's discuss myth number 2. China is exhausting and unbearable. And I'm here to tell you, this has not been my experience. What is my typical work week in China like? Well, I teach around 15 hours a week, usually between Monday and Friday, and I have Saturdays and Sundays off. Of course, I have other things I'm tasked to do at work, such as admin work, but 15 hours a week is actually a pretty good deal. And very often, my prep time was very minimal. Either I had afternoons completely free, or my workload is very light. It wasn't some 60-hour grind like people imagined. Of course, there are bad jobs out there, and it is your responsibility to do your due diligence and do basic research. But overall, my experience has been pretty positive. Were there moments when things got busy? Sure. At times, there were random events or extra things I had to prepare for, especially at the end of the semester. But nothing ever felt unfair or completely overwhelming. And something else that has really surprised me is how much schools really value your personal time. There was a clear line between work and free time, and this time gave me the opportunity to explore, to rest, and even work on other ventures and side projects. Sometimes you will have to work extra days to make up for the holidays, but when you have these days you have to make up, you'll get days off in return to balance everything out. I am not exaggerating when I can confidently say I have gotten more time off in China in 1 year than 3 years combined in South Korea. One of the biggest advantages of the Chinese system is stability, clear schedules, paid holidays, and housing included. And in some schools, you even get lunch provided to you for free. That's a pretty good deal too. For me, the most comfortable part of the job was consistency. The same students, the same classes, the same routine. No surprises and no chaos. Just a smooth rhythm that also allowed me to enjoy my life outside of work too. The surprises will come at work, but nothing along the lines of asking me to stay late or asking me to come in when I'm not supposed to. So no, it is not a prison sentence. Even if you do have stress at your job, you will get so much time off and the salaries will be higher that everything will balance itself out. In my own experience, China has opened doors that I have never expected. From the moment I came here, I see that there are many paths for professional growth. It ultimately depends on your employer. For example, the principal at my school is a foreigner from Canada. He is not only in charge of the foreign teachers, but he's also in charge of the local staff. You're not just limited to only teaching kids in the classroom forever, unless that's what you want. After your first year, it'll be much easier to transition to higher paying jobs. You could also apply for other management positions for other schools. If you want to just solely be a teacher, your salary will increase significantly after your first year, especially if you're from certain countries. One of my own managers over a decade ago just started off as a regular teacher. Now he manages the entire academic department. And a friend of mine, he's planning on opening his own after-school program here in China. And another friend of mine, he used to teach here too, but now he owns his own factory. That's entrepreneurship in action. You also start building skills that are highly transferable. Project planning, content creation, communication, and even leadership. These skills make it easier to shift to teaching online or even running your own online business. You earn, you save, and you get real-world experience to one of the most fast-paced education markets in all of the world. So if you're thinking, what happens after being in China for a year or two? The answer is whatever you want, especially if you use your time wisely. China is not a dead end. It's an opportunity, and for many, it's the start of a new beginning. Let's talk about myth number 4. In China, everything is strict and you won't feel free. This one comes up a lot, especially from people who've never actually been to China. Do I feel restricted in my daily life? Not at all. I have total freedom in how I live my day-to-day life. I can choose my own apartment. I can travel on weekends. I can visit any market I want to, and I can spend time with both locals and other expats. No one is following me and telling me how to behave. Now, is there some censorship? Sure. Like any country, there are things you should not discuss in the classroom. Politics, sensitive history, or anything controversial. But honestly, that's common sense, and this applies to most teaching jobs anywhere in the world. In my experience, schools have never pressured me to say something or to not say anything other than staying professional and respectful. You should definitely never talk about things that are political. And if someone asks you what religion you are, you can tell them, but don't be pushing it on your students. As for internet access, with a VPN, I could access everything I need. Gmail, Google Docs, you name it. All foreigners in China have a VPN. You're not going to get in trouble as long as you don't promote it to your students and you don't promote it to the locals. Keep it to yourself, enjoy the VPN, and you're fine. And outside of work, I dress how I want, speak freely with friends, and feel completely like myself. So, if you're worried about total control, here's the truth. Most of this is just based on headlines, not on actual reality. And here in China, I've had more freedom than I did in other office jobs in the United States that I've had. So no, Living and working in China does not mean giving up your freedom. In fact, it can give you the opportunity to grow, explore, and experience life from a whole new different perspective. Let's talk about something that everyone wonders about, but no one talks about. How is daily life in China, from housing, money, to basic living day-to-day life? Let's talk about it. When I first moved, I had no idea what to expect. I was envisioning cramped apartments, but the housing provided was actually clean, furnished. I was put in a convenient location. I had a washer, I had Wi-Fi, and I even had basic heating. I had everything I needed. It was actually not that bad. As for money, the salary is more than enough for a foreigner. I live comfortably, travel on holidays, and I still am able to save money. Also, China's cost of living is much more affordable and less expensive than other places in the United States or in other Western countries. Obviously, places like Shanghai and big Tier 1 cities are going to be more expensive, but in general, China's housing is much more affordable. Also, the healthcare is also super affordable and it's actually really good quality, and that's a bonus. Schools also added bonuses like flight reimbursement and health insurance. These perks really add up and make life much more convenient. Were there downsides? Of course. No place is perfect. Some appliances and some apartments are pretty old. Sometimes the water pressure is off. And connecting my bank card to my Alipay and to my WeChat was challenging, but luckily I had colleagues that helped me with that. If there's one thing I really wish I knew before moving to China, it's how affordable China is. So if you're still worried about day-to-day life, take it from me. China is more comfortable, manageable, and more affordable than you may think. Let's talk about something that isn't mentioned in your job listings, but is just as important as your contract: the culture shock and how to adapt. Because when you move to China, yes, the culture is different, but that does not mean that you can't thrive. At first, the most unfamiliar thing was how indirect communication can really be. People will not directly tell you no, but they'll hint at it. And to be honest, this is true for Asian culture in general. In the workplace and in daily life, I definitely had cultural misunderstandings. For example, thinking something was urgent when it actually wasn't, or being too direct in meetings. But instead of getting frustrated, I decided to ask questions, observe more, and stay flexible. This applies to any country you go to, whether it's China or anywhere. You should always be flexible. Over time, I really built solid relationships with other locals and Chinese staff. I showed genuine curiosity, learned a few phrases in Chinese, and made an effort to understand their holidays and local customs. And in return, I felt welcomed and people were open to me, and that was rewarding. Living in China helped me develop patience, emotional intelligence, and adaptability. It challenged my assumptions and made me a better teacher, traveler, and a better communicator. If you're nervous about fitting in, here's my advice. Be open, be respectful, and always be curious, and you'll be fine. So, is China the best move for everyone? No. But could it absolutely change your life? Yes. If I can go back in time and talk to myself before I moved to China, I would tell myself to stop believing everything I see in the media and go and see for myself. The most valuable thing I gained wasn't just money and experience, it was confidence. This happens when you go to a foreign country by yourself and have to navigate and start from scratch. That will give you the confidence to believe I can handle anything. I'd recommend China to anyone who's open-minded, adaptable, and curious. It's a solid option for higher salaries, especially for people who are not licensed teachers. But if you're someone who needs everything to go according to plan and is not comfortable with getting outside of their comfort zone, then China may not be for you, and honestly, this applies to any country while you're living abroad. For me, China wasn't a trap, it was a launch pad, and it opened doors that I never knew existed and made me a more open-minded person. And it laid the foundation for what's next, whether it's growing my career, starting a business, or helping others to do the same. So, if you're on the fence, remember, you don't have to commit forever. You do have to take that first step. And I do one-on-one consultations. Let's talk, and I can help you decide which first step is right for you. The link is in the description below. Is teaching in China perfect? No, but it could be an incredible opportunity. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.